So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I'm Nina Kong-Surtees, founder and chief art advisor of Smart Advisory. I am so excited and honored to have our guest speaker today, Dylan Cole, who is a highest caliber artist, matte painter, and production designer for over 60 plus films, including Avatar, Lord of the Rings, Maleficent, TRON, Alita, Alice in Wonderland, and many more visually stunning masterpieces. I mean, I could go on and on, but throughout his 20-year career in Hollywood, his work has shaped our popular culture and inspired a generation of artists. First of all, Dylan, congratulations on your very first NFT drop on Featured. This is a really exciting moment for you and in history in art. I think this definitely, we're in a moment, right? Like everything is shifting the way we think about art and artists in general. And also want to thank you so much for taking the time being here to share your journey as an artist and an Hollywood blockbuster world builder and your creative process. So thank you so much. Speaking of history, I want to just, I want to start sharing your work. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, this beautiful, beautiful work. Let's see, I'm just going to start sharing. Let me just minimize some windows. Can you see my screen, everyone? Awesome. So let me go to the view and just, awesome. So could you tell us about this work? I mean, it's just a beautiful monumental. I mean, if it's like a painting, I would definitely see it as like a really monumental, historical, or even like religious, like paintings that they're reminiscent of the old masters that I've seen over the years. So can you share about this work, which is Engine City, Manifest Destiny, its inspiration and creative process?
First of all, thank you so much. So this is sort of the big piece of this drop, and it's called Manifest Destiny just because of the big epicness of it. But it's sort of probably three different layers to that title, where for one, I was revisiting Engine City, which was this personal piece I'd done like 12 years ago, where I started. I was just looking, it started just innocently enough, just kind of looking for a new form language for science fiction architecture. I felt a lot of it was looking kind of the same. And I just wanted something a little bit more industrial and, kind of brutal looking, not so slick. And so I just started playing around with engines, thinking I would initially kind of disguise it more, but then I just kind of liked it. And then and then I'm like, oh, it's a personal piece. Who cares? Doesn't need to make sense for a movie. I liked it. And then when I photographed a friend of mine, just wearing a tablecloth and a Grim Reaper costume in my backyard. And then it took on a whole new story when I, kind of put it in there. I was like, oh, this is cool. And you brought up two of my favorite things, which is like historical old master style painting and religious paintings, which is exactly what I was going for, because it's suddenly, once you have those characters in there, it imbues a whole new meaning on this city, which could just be like, okay, I've seen science fiction cities before. Hopefully not like this, but so this was me revisiting and sort of upping the ante to excess of wanting to just show to me, the whole series is about sort of man's relationship with technology and the deification of technology, and literally having a religious order, going so far in my allegorical city where this religious order, builds and maintains this city. So that's why it's called Manifest Destiny, which is just constant expansion. And it was also Manifest Destiny sort of my personal work, because it's the biggest personal work I've ever done. It's 15,000 pixels wide and just obnoxiously detailed. and I say that because I was the one in there scribbling and detailing and photo bashing and all that stuff. And so this piece is really sort of the culmination of this latest series of work.
I just want to stay on for a little bit. Yeah, in terms of, yeah, you're right. It's just like, it's so speaks to our time, right? Like our relationship with technology and like humankind, right? Like mankind. And I love the way you incorporated all like the historical aspect of our painting. This is like the almost like a documentation of what we're going or our future, right? It's like it's somewhat of a distant
Yeah,
future.
yeah.
Um, I also want to
It's
know,
kind
like,
of cautionary but beautiful at the same time, which was sort of my goal. And then sorry, just the other reference I wanted to bring up that is always in my brain, though it's not incredibly apparent here, is the Hudson River School guys like Albert Beardstock and Frederick Church. Those guys I've always loved for their composition, for their lighting, for their sense of scale and epicness, and also, hence Manifest Destiny. They were painting in the prime time of that as we were expanding west in the United States. And so it's almost like if you picture the composition in the buildings as like Beardstock's Yosemite or rock formation, something like that, like, oh, okay. Then you kind of see that reference. So
yeah,
sorry,
I
continue.
never thought of that. No. I never thought of that Hudson River School. I mean, I always think of Thomas Cole. I was like, are you somehow related to Thomas Cole?
No, I'm not.
Like
Not that I'm
maybe
aware of. How about that? If I am, it's very distant.
right, exactly. No, and I mean, I was somewhat like drawn to because like you said, this has some kind of like spiritual, like religious, like connotations. And I was thinking of like this giant Hieronymus Bosch.
Yeah.
Like, like it's so like fantastic, like beings and creatures like just roaming around. I mean, it has like obviously it has some religious reference to it.
Sure.
But like the detail, like the level of detail, like it's astounding, right? Like it would have taken you like many years if you were like actual monumental painting. So I'm just curious to know like why are there so many layers and like what's that process?
Hundreds and hundreds of layers. Well, for this one, I sort of started with a very loose initial just Photoshop sketch, and then I did a layout in 3D that is kind of barely visible here. And so I kind of laid out the basic, swoop and the arc of the bay and then the main blocking of the buildings, just because it helped me, kind of really figure out lensing and camera angles and all that stuff. And then I did some big initial renders, but then, just painted and photo textured and bash and clouds and atmosphere and smoke and detail and all that stuff. That's where all the layering comes in, is that each building isn't just like, oh, I color corrected an engine and threw it on there. Each building can be from 5 to dozens of layers as I, add, rust streaks and dirt and grime and cables and highlights and, bounce light and all the different details that make it come alive. And I'm constantly stacking layers of clouds and atmosphere in between. I try and order my layers sort of kind of back to front, very much kind of like picture like cell animation, right? How you would have your layers of, background, middle ground, foreground. So I try and keep all that as separate as I can, so I can adjust it.
And yeah, and your sources, like I know these are like composite from multiple sources. And where do you find your inspiration?
All over. I just started with just like, I sort of have this kind of giant, crazy reference drive full of, terabytes of photos that I'm constantly adding to. And so it initially started there. I just had let's go to my tech folder and let's look at some engines and that's interesting. And then I since once I, stumbled upon that, like went and photographed them more, used, stock photography, bought stuff, got stuff from friends and just kind of wherever I can get it. And now it's so funny. When I did it 12 years ago, there were way fewer resources, for that sort of stuff. And now, there's a lot more. And so, yeah, there's just such a wealth of inspiration. And it's fun because I wasn't just specific to like car engines. I would do, there's aircraft engines, there's, tractor, there, all just anything, pretty much anything that had a piston I was using. So.
Amazing. Yeah, it's incredible how much detail is on this amazing image. And I'm also curious to know, like what if, like, are there like trial and errors you do in terms of like creating these like cityscapes, or like do
Oh,
you just have an image like like where to go to and just start compositing, or do you do lots of
I mean, I do
experiment?
the sketch for the basic composition. I mean, like it sort of works in several layers. It's like I have the grand allegorical idea. I'm like, okay, cool. Like this is all going to work. But then it just becomes purely picture making and graphic design and composition. And I think about, a lot of the compositional masters from from the Hudson River School to like there's the California Impressionist Edgar Payne, who I absolutely love, and then also this is very cinematic, and I think cinematically, so I look at films, um, but I tend to be pretty classical with rules of composition, thirds, and using lines and forms and contrast to lead your eye, and I'm very, very conscious about how everything guides your eye through the painting. Like, it's no accident that, oh, there's a big light hit of atmosphere behind that main guy's head. That's to draw your eye there, just all those compositional tools and tricks. But to answer your question, it's not just cool, now I plow through and execute it. There's a lot of trial and error in, like, when I lay out the image, it'll just be kind of like, oh, there's a blob of a shape there, but I will do many versions. Like the tall building on the left, I think I did 5 or 6 versions of it until I was kind of happy with it. It was still occupying the same space, but it didn't feel right to me. And same is true of like one thing that I went round and round on were the platforms that the guys are actually standing on, because that's not an engine, but it needs to feel of the world. It's a little bit more functional architecture of like, oh no, this is a balcony or a platform, but needs to have some of those components. So actually that I did tons of versions of.
Wow, amazing, amazing. Yeah, I think that brings us to your journey as an artist. I mean, you have like 20-year career in Hollywood. You're all like legend on your own, right? And let's just like dive into like how it all started. Like, what got you interested? Did you always have like an idea that you were always going to be an artist when you were growing
I
up?
think like a lot of kids, I always just like to draw. And so I like to draw, but I kind of realized I was maybe a little better than some of the other kids until I was probably like 10. And at the time I was like getting way into comic books. And so I was drawing comic books and copying panels and stuff like that. But my earlier inspiration was, I was a kid of the 80s. So I was into Star Wars and, all that. And so that's really what got me into more of this type of art. So, through middle school and high school, I was into comic books, and then I got more into like science fiction painting, and then seeing like the art of Star Wars books really cemented it for me, because I saw the old traditional matte paintings that would be done on like glass or masonite that were actually like oil or acrylic paintings that were just people painted these iconic scenes from movies, and that just seemed absolutely magical to me and so inspiring and so cool. So I really wanted to do that, but I was also into the concept art side of it with people like Ralph McQuarrie, and then eventually got into like Sid Mead and people like that. So I kind of started my career more as a matte painter, but always doing concept art on the side. And then, as a matte painter, I was, pretty much a young kid when I went down and worked on Lord of the Rings. I was like 23 and moved to New Zealand, and, got to create big iconic stuff from Mordor. And so that was just a blast. And so I kind of came out of the gates. I interned with Industrial Light and Magic in college when I went to UCLA. So I was sort of always kind of different toes and different things. So like I was a fine art major at UCLA, which is very much a, contemporary style fine art school. So, I'm not drawing spaceships in class for that stuff. I was, trying to exercise my 19-year-old self's version of fine art, and so not that I was successful, but I'm very happy I had that background, because even if I immediately wasn't going to be a fine artist, I developed what I call like a fine art conscience. It's like, okay, no, I know what's kind of acceptable. I know what's feels right. I know what the art world's about, to, a limited degree, of course, as much as anyone can. So I was happy that I had that awareness, and I think that's helping me now where I am right now. especially, you know, turning this NFT thing where it's almost like full circle coming back to being a fine artist. And it's great, you know, and it's this kind of fun path where it's like, okay, you had your 20-year career doing film, and that's prepared you, ironically, to come back and be a fine artist digitally, which is just this, you know, crazy path. And I think it's always the fun of careers, right? You never know where they're going. Yeah, despite all best intentions.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, exactly. I was just about to say, like, I was just thinking that same thing, like the full circle, right? Like
Yeah.
you said you were classically trained, like by fine art standards, and you were actually applying it to in a digital realm.
Yep.
And yeah, and then you also went, like, kind of diverted, right? Like you're actually bridging the fine art and the popular culture, and now you're in a full circle.
Yeah.
I also, yeah.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
Did you have? No, go ahead. Did you have anything to add?
No, it was just funny because, like, I always felt like the, you know, square peg in the round hole when I was at UCLA. You know, because like I always said, I want to work on movies. I like science fiction, but yeah, okay, I'm going to try and be a fine artist. And then so now it's just it is satisfying to kind of come full circle and to do it more on my terms, you know, and not have to, you know, the world's changed so much and opened up where you don't need to fall into this very narrow, whether it be LA, New York gallery scene type thing, you know, to make it in this world, and that's exciting. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, my first impression of your work, it was like I never thought of it as like the other art, right? Like so-called the other art, because sometimes when we think of a popular culture, it's like, oh, it's like just a, you know, thing, right? It's like, it's not like, oh, it's like culture, it's like a, you know, elevated high culture, right? Like there's like, you know, highbrow and lowbrow, but somehow, like if you look at the history, right, like a lot of has changed, even the movement has changed. And so like guys like Warhol and Rauschenberg always thought like art and life is the same, it's there's no difference, and they actually try to brought that out. And I feel like with your work, I think you're trying to convey that same thing, right? Like I mentioned earlier, bridging the fine art world and the popular culture together there.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, like, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and I'm sorry, I was like, yes,
No worries.
And that, no, for me, it is very much, and like taking not even contemporary, but going back to classical art and imbuing those principles on, you know, science fiction, and I view this series not as like, I view it as an exciting series to grow, but I'm not like doing concept art for a movie. To me, it very much is, I was viewing this more as like a gallery show where it's like, no, this is a body of work to present, but they each stand on their own. And to me, it was more important to invoke a feeling and a response, and, you know, and to ask these questions about the allegory of the city and man and technology and all those issues first. And let it, like, to me, it's important that it function as art and not concept art for something I'm trying to pitch or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, like, if you really look at the contemporary art, right? Like somehow the classical art kind of got lost throughout the history. Like there's that, especially the figurative aspect of things. Like if you look at the whole history of art, it's like, yeah, like it was started as figurative, and then we went, like, once the 20th century hit, it became more abstract and somehow not accessible to everyone, right? And somehow your work is combining those two around, like the classical elements and like the popular culture, and at the same time it's like somewhat distant world, distant future, some kind of you know, like just like beyond, like, you know, spiritual world, but you made it accessible.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think that's how I mean, that was my impression of the overall.
No, and that was thankful that I'm so grateful you said that, because you kind of nailed everything I was going for. So thank you.
Amazing. And yeah, so can you just touch upon, like, okay, so you had this classical training from in school, but what made you decide to really go into Hollywood, pursue a career in Hollywood? How did you make that, like, how did you break into that career?
Right. I think that was always kind of the goal. You know, when I went to UCLA, I think I was always thinking I was gonna go into film, and that it's like, okay, cool, I have this background and I could, you know, try and get gallery shows, or, you know, go on to get an MFA or something like that. But I you know, was always just a lover of film. and wanted to work on that. So that kind of was the primary goal. The first big step was getting an internship at Industrial Light and Magic in the matte painting department, which was digital matte painting at that point, creating virtual environments, which is everything I wanted to do. So I kind of saw what the top professionals were doing. And so I pretty much came back, locked myself in my room, and just kind of practiced until my stuff looked better. And then it was just kind of, blitzing and perseverance. I was a super, super driven kid. And, working on, my portfolio and sending out submissions, 7 days a week, just 24/7. That's what I was doing. But actually kind of an interesting break-in, because I'd only done like a couple small commercials and a music video. And then I finally got I got hired by a great matte painting studio called Illusion Arts, and Sid Dutton, one of my heroes, hired me. But right after, they had to lay me off because they didn't get some work. And then right after, September 11th happened. And so the whole industry just shut down. And, so everyone was out of work, much less me. So I had a very kind of long path back, but it was a year of very, very sporadic stuff. And then I got a film that took me to Prague, which was my first time going to Europe, and it was great. I was working on a movie, and I'm in Prague for the summer. Life is good. And then within a few months later, I was off to New Zealand to work on Lord of the Rings. So it was this super slow start, and then it just took off very quickly. And so it's a very kind of close-knit community. So it's sort of like, once you get that foot in the door and you don't screw it up, you can, just word of mouth and contacts, because, it's such a project-based industry. You get to know a group of people, they scattered to 10 different places. Cool, now I know people in 10 different places. And then you do it again and again and again. And pretty soon you kind of know at least someone everywhere, which is great. And so, and then I was fortunate that, people kept liking what I was doing and kept getting work, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
Amazing. That brings us to the next question is what is your biggest challenge and rewarding part of being an artist?
I think biggest challenge is balance, balancing, work and home life. And I'm a dad, and I just got married, and literally like a month ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm, dad to my boy that's almost 9. And then I'm working my day job, which is no small thing, co-production designing all the Avatar sequels, and then trying to, be a fine artist, on the side, and kind of because I have all these, every artist I think is just cursed with ideas rattling around their head that they have to get out in some fashion. And so that's what was so exciting about this, is that I was able to finally do that. I had done some sketches over the years for other Engine City stuff, but I'd started and stopped and never really finished anything. And so this was a wonderful opportunity to say, okay, no, I'm going to get serious about this. Let's really explore this world and the questions it asks about us.
Yeah. And the rewarding part of being an artist?
It's just creating, and sharing it. I'll get immense satisfaction, making a work that first and foremost, I have to be happy with. And then that's exciting in of itself. It's like, oh, wow, I did it. Cool. And then it's, a bonus if other people like it. And then it's really nice when people identify what you were trying to do. Like, that actually made me incredibly happy that what your description was kind of like, yes, exactly, she gets it. And so that's rewarding as well. And to me, it's kind of pure communication in a way, where I don't like to over explain things. It's like, no, there's the piece, that's the explanation, take out of it what you want. To me, like the questions seem more powerful than the answers to me.
Absolutely. And of course, like the layers of detail that's involved within your work, it should explain. It's complex, right? It's not easy. It's visually accessible, but it's like the layers of details. Like it actually allows us to explore, go deeper into the image, immerse ourselves literally. Like the details are just astounding.
Thank you. There's a little aspect of like, oh, neat city, but then you can go further and think about it any way that you want, which is exciting, where you're like, okay, what's the story? But then even further, which is, where I hope you get to, is how does this reflect on our world,
Yeah, absolutely. So what was the best advice you received, and or advice that you wish you had when you were starting out as an
Ooh,
artist?
that's hard. Best advice. Probably just being honest with yourself and honest with your work. Don't, and I guess I don't even know who said this to me. I think it's probably whatever wisdom I might have gained. I'm sure I heard it in different pieces, but being very honest with your portfolio, with your work, where your weaknesses are and where your strengths are. Don't get high on yourself. Like every artist should, always be constantly trying to improve. It's not like I think, yeah, I made it, I'm good now. It's like, no. I'm always trying to improve. I'm always ripping my work apart. I always hate some part of it, or all of it sometimes. But it's being hypercritical of your own work. It's the only way you're going to improve.
Yeah, I mean, you said that really well. I think sometimes we get hard on ourselves in terms of like our weaknesses, or when things don't work out, and we get discouraged. And our artists are so much, right? Because like you said, you mentioned earlier, artists have so many ideas, and they're trying to find a ways to execute them, but it's not possible to do it all, right? And it's also allowing yourself and giving yourself the permission to like accept who you are as an artist. And
and with what I said, it kind of based on what you said, comes the flip side of that. Be critical of yourself and always be improving, but don't be critical so much where you feel crippled or have to stop. It's like, no, that criticism is inspiration to continue and keep getting better. And the other thing that I see in young artists is, because they're trying so hard to make it or so hard to get better, that they will view other people's success as a negative reflection on them. And that, like, it's not all just a competition. Like, be happy for your peers, embrace your peers. It is a community, and one person's success doesn't take anything away from you. Just don't think of it that way.
Absolutely. That's a really good advice. And I think sometimes, and also we tend to view the success as an overnight thing,
Exactly.
right? Like, and we don't see the hard work behind the scenes, as you mentioned. Yeah, I'm
a 25, 30-year overnight success. And so yeah,
absolutely. Speaking of success, so what's your definition of success?
That's hard. I think just being happy. I mean, that's ultimately what it is, right? I mean, you can, if you make a piece of work that someone understands and likes, that alone can be success. And then let's say you're traditional artist, you do an oil painting and they buy that and they hang it on their wall, even if they bought it for $5, who cares? That's cool. You connected with that person. You have that on your wall. Is that going to, pay your rent and pay all your bills? No, but I think there's a base level of like being a successful artist. Like you hope you can make a living at it, but that doesn't mean you're not a gazillionaire. It means it means I can barely afford my studio apartment in the crappy part of town, but I'm doing art full time. Like, that's awesome. And so to me, it's just happiness and satisfaction, which is always hard because as artists, we're always like trying to improve. So you're kind of never satisfied, but you always have to balance that with being grateful for how far you've come. I mean, I've been very fortunate in my career, but I am still hypercritical of myself and always want to try new things and do new things and never satisfied. I'm not unhappy though, but I'm not satisfied.
I mean, here's the age-old question. Like a lot of people ask, like artists, is like, how do you know your work is finished? And how do you know, like, you're happy with what you produced?
Deadlines.
Like what? I'm sorry?
Deadlines. And I think no, I mean truly in the film world, it's deadlines. And so I've had things ripped from my hand, like literally like Dylan hit save. I know. And so like a trick that I learned or a good way to work. There's two funny little stories. The practical good way to do this is work on your painting as if it has to be turned in at any given moment. So make sure it functions. The sketch needs to be clear. It needs to tell whatever you need to tell, whether it's a story or a design or anything, so that when it's taken from you, fine. So don't start detailing up some corner, but you haven't addressed your main thing. So, so always have it be in a state where if it's taken from you, you can live with it. And so that's been helpful for me. Like when I do a loose sketch, I need it to read, even if there's no detail and it's just sloppy, it at least communicates the idea that I'm trying to communicate. But on the flip side of that, there's a great old story about an old map painter that to get more time, he would work on the whole painting, but he would have like a really important part just look bad, like intentionally, like it wasn't finished or something. It's like, oh yeah, I'll do it as soon as I finish this part. But he would make sure to do that important part last, or just put a big obnoxious brushstroke there or something, so that he would have time to do the rest. Then he would just fix that thing last to buy himself time, which I thought that was a really funny thing. Or to give the director something to comment on, like, oh, it's all beautiful, but once you change that, it'll be perfect. And then you empower the director, let them feel involved, and you're like, ah, you're right, you're absolutely right. What was I thinking? Then you go fix it. But as a fine artist, that's a way harder question, because there's no one ripping it out of your hands. I think for my artist friends, it's gallery shows, right? Like, nope, I got a show. I'm going to put wet oils on the wall, not even varnished, you just throw them up there. So, I mean, but again, that's deadlines, right? And I had a similar thing with this drop. Like I was tweaking these pieces, like, oh, okay, fine, you need them. And then I turn them in, and then like a week later, I'm like, have you used them yet? Okay, cool, because I updated them. And then, and Jessica can laugh about that, because that's 100% what I did. But it's just what's fun about this, the benefit of me doing this in my spare time, nights and weekends over this time, is that I have the benefit of time and distance, where I'm coming back to it with fresh eyes, whether it be a day, 2 days, a week later, and then I see it with fresh eyes, and I see things that I want to maybe tweak. But yeah, age-old question. It's when in doubt, deadlines.
Actually, that's like one of the best answers I've heard, because like some people are like, I just know, like, you get one more answer, but I love that response, because it's like, yeah, it's so true to life, right? And especially it feels like chaotic when anything launches, whether it's a gallery show or it's an art exhibition or it's an NFT drop, right? Like there's always like it just, and then all of a sudden it just magically happens, right?
Yeah, no, and like I was at a point where I was really happy with these. And then I started, just to like show off the detail, I made these like little pull out movies where you start in like a crop and then you pull out. But then of course I'm focusing on that crop. I'm like, oh, okay, well that's a whole like painting now. And so when I go in and touch up the crop and do it again.
That's amazing. Yeah, I want to come back to that, the NFT question. And it's like, well, first of all, you're leading the way, right? Like you're classically trained. Now you had a 20-year legendary career in Hollywood. Now you're leading the way of creating this piece for, I mean, that was it's somewhat new technology too. And it's also shifting the way art is being treated, or even artists being treated. Like when you touched upon the notion of like the starving artist, right? Like, that's been ongoing for so long, but because of the NFTs nowadays, it's actually changing that whole the tradition role. So why NFTs? Why now? And why would featured on Binance?
Yeah, no, that's just be prepared for me to ramble. No, I think there's lots of exciting things. For one, NFTs. It's funny you say I'm kind of early leading the way. In some ways, I feel like I'm late to the party, but that was kind of, I'm not going to say by design, but sort of, because I heard about Beeple like everyone else and all that stuff, and I wasn't as involved in social media, and so I was a little late to that. And then I had some friends start selling stuff. I'm like, wait, what's going on? And then I wanted to understand it more, because I was like, okay, is this here to stay? What is this? Is this weird? Are these like what is it, the Dutch tulips of the 1600s or whatever? Like what is this, right? And so and so it was understanding that, and then obviously understanding all the energy and eco concerns, because I care deeply about the environment. I'm a production designer on Avatar, which is like one of the most eco-conscious things there is, and so which I do care deeply about, and that I couldn't be hypocritical. And so, and then I also was like, I didn't want to just post some old paintings and make it look like I'm just trying to cash in on some stuff I'd done. I really wanted to do it right. And so Featured by Binance happened with the sort of a mutual friend just connected us, and it just seemed perfect. They were looking for artists, and I hadn't committed to a platform yet, and because there's so much noise in the NFT marketplace. There's just everyone's minting everything, so there's a lot of lesser work, and then sadly, there's a lot of great work being ignored as well. And I was, I didn't want to be lost in the shuffle, and I didn't want, and I didn't want to go with a wrong platform. And so when I found Featured by Binance, my limited understanding of this world is, understanding the difference between, proof of stake and proof of work, and, how the efficiency is, several hundred times greater than like an Ethereum site or blockchain. That made me feel a lot more comfortable. And then just working with them, where it wasn't like, cool, here's a platform, post your stuff, good luck. They were really excited to work with me, and I felt very much more like, oh, you're like a gallery, and we're creating a show, and we're talking, and so I felt like I was supported and had partners and wonderful people, and so that was very important to me, because also to help, just honestly help me navigate this world, because I was new to it as well. So yeah, it's been a really good fit. And as far as why NFTs in general, I think, over these 20 plus years, I've had, been fortunate to have people that are enthusiastic about my work and want to collect it in some way. And I'm like, well, I kind of only have a few sketches that are just for me. I'm not going to sell them, or I can give you like a signed print, and that's not terribly gratifying, right? And so the concept of an original or something that actually has value, or that a collector can be excited about was great, because I basically had nothing to offer, nor did anyone else in the digital space. And I think it's so exciting, because all these digital artists have been, mainly doing client work to pay their bills and to be an artist, and they're doing personal stuff whenever they can. But I think this is going to afford so much freedom and unlock this, wave of creativity. And I think we're going to see so many exciting projects and pieces and things we can't even dream of from the whole, from the whole world. I think we're at the dawn of this digital renaissance of art, and that's super exciting, because there's so much talent. Like I know just in my career, like seeing what people have sketched on the side. Oh, here's someone just working on the nights and weekends. I'm like, dude, that's amazing. And it's really cool, and you just want to see each and every one of those projects get the time and attention that they deserve. So yeah, it's a very exciting time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you brought up a really great point, right? Like the NFTs are still somewhat new, right? Like we're still navigating that new world, right? Like it's a different system, it's a completely different type of platform, right? The blockchain, and the market is now it's somewhat saturated, right? Like we get all sorts of weird stuff that people are just creating. Yes, it's great that everyone is on board with creating stuff. Like we're expanding our creativity at the same time, is how do we find a really high quality and high value works, and this is one of the platforms that actually helps you, right, navigate that world a little bit.
Well, yeah, and as you so very well know, which is what you're doing, it's about curation. And you need kind of help navigating, oh, where do I find the good stuff? Who are the good people? Is this good? I don't know. And you can like what you like, but there's, as I said, there's just so much noise, and it's hard to, it's oftentimes hard to find the good stuff.
Absolutely. Before I open up the question to the audience, I just want to have one last question. Hopefully it's easy, but who is your legendary artist and why?
Who's my legendary artist?
Yes.
Oof. I have too many to count.
Who stands out the most?
Well, it depends if we're talking fine art or film art people. And that's
both, one of each.
Yeah, I think, all-time fine art, I don't know. I guess I have to, push comes to shove, probably go either Bierstadt or Jean-Leon Gérôme. I love the Orientalists just for the just detail and the life they captured, even though I know it was 90% fictionalized, it was gorgeous work. But Bierstadt, just for the epicness and the purity of it, and you know, his composition and lighting, you know, that he's probably my guy. Like his Yosemite series and all the stuff in the Sierras and the Rockies is just stunning. Love that stuff. And then on the film side, then it's people like Ralph McQuarrie and Sid Mead, you know, just as far as being amazing designers and illustrators, and so key in defining looks of, you know, iconic things like Star Wars and Blade Runner and stuff like that. Those are probably my main guys. But I just love art. Like I'm always a fan. Like I love discovering new artists, and you know, I love meeting artists. Like recently I became really good friends with one of like my absolute favorite living painters, and that's Jeremy Mann. We became like, I just adored his landscapes. I mean cityscapes for years. I'm like, oh my God, that's everything I love about a cityscape. It's strong and it's bold, but it's accurate and representational, but so expressive. Oh my God, I love it. And then I met him at a conference. All I wanted to do was like say hi. And then we became like great friends, hung out the whole time. We hang out and so like that alone is like so rewarding, you know, is getting those relationships with artists that you incredibly admire. Like, I mean, no joke, one of my absolute favorite living painters. And so yeah, that's what's fun about this world, you know, is connecting.
All right, let's just go to Q&A from the audience. Let's see, I'm just gonna go backwards as I see it, the recent ones. So the question is, how do you meet other artists? Is there a concept artist, production artist club? Do y'all meet at events? How does the community connect?
Yeah, sort of any way and every way. You know, first and foremost, just at jobs, you know, like every job you have a different group of artists, and that's where you get to work with someone, really get to know them. But I've met a lot of people at different events. Like I was just talking about, that was at the Trojan Horses Unicorn THU event in Malta a couple years ago. I've met a bunch at Comic-Con, just, you know, over the years going down, and that's kind of my favorite thing to do at Comic-Con now, is just go see artists that I might see once a year and just go hang out and talk. And it's kind of funny, you know, because we're all kind of, at least on the film side and game side, pretty much aware of everyone, but we don't necessarily know each other. And so, yeah, when you finally get to meet them in person, it's great just to talk and see how they are. And then there's like Lightbox Expo. So yeah, I mean, a lot of these events is where we meet people we haven't met, but a lot of times, sometimes just chatting in comments on like Instagram or something, where I like to reach out to someone who I've never met and like, dude, I love your painting. It's awesome. and then, you know, they're happy to chat, and it's fun.
Amazing. Another question is, how was your experience working at Weta and living in New Zealand?
I absolutely loved New Zealand. It was fantastic. I lived there for almost a year, and working at Weta was fun. I mean, I got to work on you know, this iconic project of Lord of the Rings, and it was cool because like I was like, the first one came out, I was still in college, and then so to like graduate and then go work on the third was amazing. It was a super challenging project and tons of hours and all that stuff, but ultimately I got to, you know, create a lot of work that I was really proud of, and there's just so many talented people down there. Yeah, no, I absolutely loved it.
Amazing. Another question is, do you plan making new class as one back in 2016, or it wouldn't be anytime soon because of all of the work you have?
Yeah, no, I did a mentorship class, which is so funny because that doesn't seem that long ago. I'm like, oh, that was 5 years ago. Oh my God. Yes, I did a very small mentorship class, which was a ton of fun. But yes, again, the time constraints are a challenge. I look forward to doing hopefully some more like one-off events, one-off workshops. Yeah, I'd love to get back to it. It's just with life, it's very hard to make the time for.
Absolutely. I think that was another follow-up question is, Dylan, you could make a new class of an unlockable of your NFT holders.
Yeah, no, we definitely are looking for some fun, exciting things to do for the NFT holders, whether they be could be, behind the scenes stuff, whether it be, sketches or process videos. Yeah, maybe we can do even down the road, maybe like an exclusive workshop for those NFT holders could be really cool. Or even just like a AMA type thing, which would be like almost like a live AMA thing with like, okay, I'm just in Photoshop. What do you want to see? Let's see how we do it. Yeah, no, I think there's lots of fun possibilities, but for sure we're gonna have special things for the NFT holders.
Amazing, amazing. Looking forward to it if it actually comes to a realization.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another follow-up question is, where are your art projects or jobs? Are they mostly in California?
Mine, now it's such a global thing, and since COVID, everyone's working at home anyway, so it's very much a global thing. A lot of mine aren't in California. A lot of Avatar, Avatar is based here, but we also are based in New Zealand kind of simultaneously. That's where Weta is, and that's where we did a lot of live action. I was back and forth, but we still have stages here and offices here. A lot of films will start here because you think of Hollywood, but then eventually they are shot elsewhere. There isn't as much filming here in Los Angeles. Sadly, not much at all. So it usually goes to like England or Canada or elsewhere in the States, like Atlanta's big. So it really is all over. I don't think you need to be based in California to be in this career. You could literally be kind of based anywhere with the remote possibilities. I know certain, especially like game studios and VFX studios, and even a lot of production for film, like if they need people and you're good, they will make it work.
Amazing, amazing. Another question is, have you ever considered integrating traditional media in your digital art, like oils or acrylics?
Yes, I have, and it was funny, right before, like a year ago, I was really planning a series of large oil paintings, and I've been sketching them digitally, and then so that would be like a start, and then I would then just use that as my sketch to do a traditional painting. But then I thought about how to come full circle where, and I haven't done this yet, but it's like, okay, then take that painting and then work digitally on top of it, and that becomes a new work. But to me, that's a little hard because I like having the original, like the traditional painting that I can hold still be a thing and not have to be a step to the final thing that's digital. So I've thought about it a ton. I don't know the final answer, but it's definitely something that I do intend on exploring.
Awesome, awesome. Another question is, do you have any plans to work on a personal creative collaborations with other artists rather than professional work?
None as of yet. I know there's lots of things swirling around and stuff, but nothing concrete and nothing yet. I think there's still just so much that I'm excited to do, and even within this series, there's a lot more to come.
Amazing. Are there any questions? Please feel free to type in your questions. Let's see. Well, I mean, it's a more general question for you, Dylan, is like what is the best way for people to connect with you?
I've since, it was funny because of COVID, I was like, I should probably be on social media more so I can at least talk to other artists and, and just connect. And this NFT thing is sort of just, help that as well. So yeah, my email's on my site. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff and Facebook. And so I'm fairly accessible. Yeah, no, you can find me. Just be patient for a response. Sometimes if I don't respond, is really, really busy.
All right, I'm gonna take like the last two questions because we're almost running out of time. Let me just take a look. Okay, so I'm gonna ask this question. You have talked about being driven and alluded to your own vigorous work ethics. It has obviously led to tremendous success. How did you make sure that your drive and work ethic was leading you in the direction you wanted to go? In other words, how did you make sure that your immense amount of preparation prepared you for the job you wanted it?
Yeah, it's sort of like, are you practicing the right thing, sort of thing, right? I guess when I was initially breaking in, it was as a matte painter, and so I just saw like, okay, these are the types of matte paintings I'm seeing, in films and commercials and TV. So I made sure to touch lots of different subject matter. Like I'm not just going to do sci-fi cities all day. It's like I did, you know, from castles to contemporary cities to just landscapes to a lot of just sky replacement stuff to, of course, the sci-fi city stuff. You know, I was trying to be diverse, and then just trying to make it look real, just, you know, just make it look as good as I could, and kind of goes back to that honesty I was talking about. And then when I could, show it to anybody that would give me feedback, and take it seriously. Don't get defensive, don't get hurt. It's just, okay, cool, I hear you. I will do better. And even if you might disagree, or, oh, I did it this way, just hear them, you know, and understand where they're coming from. And then I don't know if I did it perfectly. I just sent out a million different portfolios, and then finally ended up kind of getting some calls. And, you know, but I did find that once I got my foot in the door, I was hired by people that I had been ignored from, but it was through that word of mouth. And that just showed how strongly that word of mouth was. It was like, okay, they might have liked my work, but like just the, hey, Joe next door in the office, who do you know? Cool. Like, you're like, okay, like, are they cool? Can I talk to them? You know, like they're not a nightmare. And then you can hire him or her just based on word of mouth and recommendations are so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And one last question from the audience. Is it better to be specialized within one type of concept or field while building a portfolio, or to have a general concept and ideas from different fields such as machines, characters, landscape, etc.?
Yeah, this is always a tough one. I think you want to market yourself as being diverse and you want to show all that stuff, but ultimately it's hard to kind of become really good at all of them. I would say be somewhat well-versed in all of them, where, you know, push comes to shove, you can help out, but I would say follow your passion. If your passion is in hard surface tech, go do hard surface tech for, you know, 3/4 of your time. My passion was environments. Like though bizarrely, I'm supervising creatures on Avatar, which is way out of my wheelhouse, but I'm learning. And that's where it's like, okay, just be aware, you know? But like, you know, like I am not a character designer. You know, I do not start from scratch designing creatures generally. You know, I'm an environment guy, and that was sort of my specialty, but I don't specialize within that. It's like you can have a specialty, but be broad. So like if you're a creature guy, I would say do characters and creatures. Okay, cool. Like, and hard surface, that's pretty limited. Don't just do spaceships then. Do anything from, you know, props to cities to whatever, you know, and I'd say try and pick a focus, but be as diverse as you can within that focus.
Amazing, amazing. What's next for you after this NFT drop officially?
After this NFT drop, yeah. I'm you know, continuing to work on the Avatar sequels and really look forward to the release of Avatar 2 next year, and lots of hard work ahead. And then I look forward to continuing this and doing my next drop, and, you know, continuing this world. I mean, we're going to have a you know, kind of a part 2 to this drop at some point soon. All that work's already done and is very exciting. Kind of, I made a little a trailer for the drop, and you can see those pieces in there. And then also just coming up, like, you know, not going to just live in Engine City the rest of my life, just coming up with other things. But I like the idea of developing a world, which is what I know how to do, but letting it function in a, you know, at a higher level, whether it be metaphorically or allegorically, and you know, try and figure out yeah, just new places that excite me in that way, that would appeal to myself as more fine art, you know, and hopefully to others, you know.
Amazing, amazing. Do you have any last remarks before we end this interview?
I don't think so. Not that I can think of. Just thank you so much for having me. And this is, yeah, such an exciting time. And just yeah, I hope everyone checks out the drop and enjoys the work. I'm just excited to share the work first and foremost.
Yeah. Well, and we're so grateful that you're here to share your journey and all these stories about your experience, and as well as sharing your work. So just to the audience, remember to pick up your piece of Dylan Cole's first and ever NFT while you can. I think there's a link on our chat, and be sure to check that out. And for Dylan's one out of one piece, which is the Manifest Destiny we saw earlier, is the most significant piece in the collection. So that ends on Friday, this Friday, the 25th. And the winner of this piece can get the layered PSD file to create this work. This is amazing. This is like unheard of.
Good luck going through all the layers.
Yeah, well, thank you so much again, Dylan, for taking your time being with us today to share your journey. And yeah, and thank you everyone for joining live today.
All right, Nina, thank you so much. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.